Welcome to Void of Fears. I've been checking my analytics, and I noticed that 46% of you watching right now aren't subscribed yet. We're on the journey to 10k subscribers, and your support would mean everything. If you're enjoying the content, hitting that subscribe button takes just a second and doesn't cost a thing. You can always change your mind later, but your subscription helps this channel grow more than you know. While you're at it, drop a like on this video to help it reach more people who might enjoy facing their fears with us. Now let's dive into today's story. Space has always been silent. That's what they tell you in training. But there's a difference between the silence they describe and the one I'm experiencing now. This silence, it has weight. It presses against the hull of our ship, against our minds like an invisible ocean trying to crush us into nothingness. The vastness out here isn't empty, it's alive with absence. The year is 2245, and we're pushing further than humanity has ever ventured before. Our mission is to explore what astronomers have dubbed the Eventide Fringe, the very edge of our galaxy, where stars grow sparse and the darkness between them stretches vast and uncharted. They call it a cosmic dead zone. No spacecraft that's ventured this far has ever returned. The last expedition, the Hermes, disappeared without a trace 3 years ago. Before that, the Pathfinder went silent after sending one final garbled transmission that our analysts still debate the meaning of. Yet, here we are, the crew of the Odyssey, breaking new ground, breaking old records, perhaps breaking ourselves in the process. I've spent the past hour staring out the observation deck window. The stars are different here. Fewer, more distant, arranged in unfamiliar patterns. There's a smudge of light to port that Dr. Driscoll tells me is Andromeda, our neighbouring galaxy. From this angle it looks uncomfortably close, as if we're teetering on the edge of our own cosmic neighbourhood, about to fall into the next one. My crew is the best Earth could assemble. Dr. Caelan Driscoll, our science officer, brilliant and insatiably curious about alien technology. He's been publishing papers on theoretical xenotech since he was 22. His enthusiasm borders on obsession, which makes him both invaluable and slightly concerning on a mission like this. Lieutenant Mayra Voss serves as our security chief, ex-military decorated in the Titan conflicts, and deeply suspicious of anything not human-made. She carries a custom-modified pulse rifle everywhere, permission for which I had to obtain through 3 layers of bureaucracy. Her perpetual frown has only deepened the farther we've travelled from Earth. Engineer Cassian Thorne is the most practical person I've ever met. No interest in the profound questions of space exploration, just the mechanical puzzles of keeping us alive in the void. His hands are always stained with lubricant or marked with minor burns, and his practical approach to mechanical problems has saved us countless times during this journey. Navigator Tamsin Vale seems to read the stars like they're whispering to her personally. There's something almost mystical about her understanding of space. She can plot courses through gravitational anomalies that the ship's AI calculates as impossible, yet she's never been wrong. She's been unusually quiet these past few days, staring at her navigation charts with increasing concern. There are others too. Finn Wilder, our young communications officer, who believes in the power of connection, even across the void. Enthusiastic, idealistic, with a talent for picking up patterns in signal noise that borders on the uncanny. Dr. Orion Slate, monitoring our psychological well-being on this long journey, though his own eyes have grown increasingly haunted as we've pushed further into the unknown. Vesper Eric serves as our security officer with a checkered past. Rumours say he was once a thief who got caught trying to steal experimental tech from a Europa research station, then offered his skills to avoid imprisonment. Talin Kaur studies alien technology with almost religious fervour. His quarters are filled with holographic projections of every confirmed extraterrestrial artifact humanity has ever discovered. And Zara Caelan bold and defiant, always the first to volunteer for the riskiest tasks. She has a collection of scars she'll proudly show off after her third drink in the mess hall. Together, we represent humanity's finest. Personally, I think we represent humanity's hubris. I should be sleeping. We're on the final approach to the coordinates that mark the absolute boundary of previous exploration, and I'll need to be alert. But sleep won't come. There's a feeling in my gut. The same feeling I had before the disaster on Europa Station. A sense of impending wrongness that defies logical explanation. "Commander." Tamsin's voice breaks through my thoughts, emanating from the comm panel by the window. Her normally confident tone wavers. "I need you on the bridge." I acknowledge and make my way through the quiet corridors of the Odyssey. The night shift is minimal, just enough crew to monitor essential systems while the others rest. The low hum of the ship's engines has been my lullaby for months now, but tonight it seems to carry an unfamiliar note. The bridge is dimly lit when I arrive, most stations powered down to their night settings. Tamsin stands at her navigation console, the blue glow of her screens casting harsh shadows across her face. Dr. Driscoll is already there as well, which is unusual for this hour. "What am I looking at, Navigator?" I ask, moving to her station. "Something's wrong with the readings," she says, fingers dancing across her console to adjust parameters. "I've been tracking an anomaly for the past 3 hours. At first I thought it was an instrumentation error, but I've run 4 diagnostic cycles. The equipment is functioning correctly." "Define wrong," I say, studying the star charts flickering across multiple screens. "There's something ahead, massive. It's blocking starlight patterns that should be visible from our position, but it's not registering as a celestial body. Not a planet, not an asteroid field, not a nebula. It's just there." Her voice drops almost to a whisper, "And it's not moving like it should." Dr. Driscoll is already hovering over her shoulder, eyes widening behind his glasses. "That can't be right. Let me see those readings." "It's not a navigation error," Tamsin insists, fingers flying across her console. "I've verified every calculation. There's something there, something big." Lieutenant Voss arrives, summoned by the quiet alert I'd sent from the console. Her perpetual frown deepens as she surveys our concerned faces. "Asteroid field," she suggests, practical as always. "No," Tamsin shakes her head, bringing up a 3-dimensional stellar map. "It's a single object. And it's enormous. The mass readings are off the charts." I lean forward, toggling the main view screen to maximum magnification. At first, there's nothing but the familiar speckled black of deep space. Then, as the image enhances, we see it. A shape, unnatural and vast against the stars, angular in places, curved in others. Its surface gleams dully, reflecting distant starlight in ways that suggest artificial materials rather than natural cosmic formations. "That's a ship," Engineer Thorne whispers, having arrived silently behind us. Disbelief colours his usually matter-of-fact voice. "A spacecraft." Dr. Driscoll laughs, a sound of pure wonder. "Not just a spacecraft. Look at the scale markers. That thing is the size of a city. No bigger. A metropolis." The bridge falls silent as the image on screen resolves further. The vessel is unlike anything in human records, a massive, elegant structure floating in the emptiness. Its hull is etched with strange luminous symbols that pulse with an inner light, creating patterns that seem almost like writing. No visible propulsion systems, no recognizable communication arrays. Just a silent, sleek behemoth. "It appears to be dormant," Dr. Driscoll says, unable to contain his excitement. "Possibly abandoned. Do you know what this means? The first confirmed extraterrestrial vessel. This could be the greatest discovery in human history." "Or the greatest threat," Lieutenant Voss counters, her hand instinctively moving to the weapon at her hip. "We should keep our distance, establish remote observation protocols. For all we know, this could be some kind of trap. A trap? Driscoll scoffs. That's been sitting here for who knows how long, just waiting for someone to wander to the edge of the galaxy. That's absurd. Is it? Voss challenges. We've never found proof of intelligent alien life despite centuries of searching. And suddenly, just as we reach the furthest point of exploration, we find this? The timing is suspicious. You're being paranoid, Driscoll argues. We need to board it, examine its technology, think of what we could learn. I raise my hand, silencing them both. The tension on the bridge is already high enough without my two senior officers bickering. We'll approach with caution, full sensor sweep, no one boards until we know it's safe. But even as I give the order, something stirs in my gut, a primal warning, the kind ancient humans might have felt when staring into the darkness of an unexplored cave, knowing instinctively that predators lurked within. Wake the rest of the crew, I tell Voss. I want everyone at their stations in 30 minutes, and contact Earth. They should know what we've found. That will take weeks for the message to reach them, she reminds me. All the more reason to send it now. As the bridge erupts into activity, I return to the view screen, studying the alien vessel. From this distance, it seems somehow expectant, as if it's been waiting a very long time for someone to find it. The following hours are a flurry of analysis and debate. Every sensor we have is trained on the mysterious vessel, gathering data that raises more questions than answers. The ship's materials are unfamiliar to our databases, composed of alloys that shouldn't be stable. Energy readings fluctuate in patterns that our scientists can't explain, and the symbols etched across its hull defy all our linguistic analysis programs. Finn Wilder's voice crackles over the comms. Commander, I'm picking up something. Not exactly a transmission, but there's a pattern, like pulses, coming from the vessel. Automated systems, I suggest, joining him at the communication station. Maybe, he says, but I hear the doubt in his voice. He adjusts his headset, brow furrowed in concentration. It's not on any frequency we typically use for communication. It's spread across the spectrum, actually, and it almost sounds like breathing. I listen to the audio he's isolated. It does sound disturbingly organic, a slow, rhythmic pulse that makes the hairs on my arm stand up despite my attempts to remain objective. Could it be some kind of mechanical function? I ask. Life support systems, perhaps. Possibly, Finn admits, but there's something else in the signal. Listen to this section. He isolates another segment, and I hear what sounds like whispers beneath the pulsing, too faint to make out words, but clearly vocalizations of some kind. It could be signal degradation, I suggest, not entirely convinced. For 3 hours straight, in exactly the same pattern. That's not degradation, Commander. Something on that ship is transmitting. I spend some time in my quarters reviewing our options. Standard protocol for first contact scenarios is clear. Observe from a distance, attempt communication, and retreat at the first sign of hostility. But we're so far from Earth that waiting for instructions is impractical. This discovery is too significant to simply turn around. After consulting with the senior officers, I make my decision. We will send a small team to board the vessel and conduct a preliminary exploration. The Odyssey will maintain a safe distance, ready to retrieve us or depart at the first sign of trouble. Our boarding party consists of myself, Dr. Driscoll, Lieutenant Voss, Engineer Thorne, and Security Officer Vesper Eriks. Dr. Slate insists on providing each of us with a neural monitor, a small device attached behind the ear that will track our vital signs and basic brain activity. The psychological impact of entering an alien environment cannot be overstated, he explains as he calibrates the devices. These will alert me if any of you experience extreme stress or disorientation. You mean if we start losing our minds? Voss says bluntly. Slate doesn't deny it. Essentially, yes, the human mind isn't designed to process truly alien concepts. There are documented cases of researchers experiencing psychotic breaks after prolonged exposure to even small extraterrestrial artifacts. Comforting, I mutter. We board our shuttle, each of us sealed in environmental suits despite atmospheric readings suggesting the interior of the alien vessel is breathable. Better safe than exposed to unknown pathogens. Weapons are checked, equipment is verified, and final communications tests are conducted. Zara Kalen approaches me just before we depart. "Commander," she says, her usually confident expression now uncertain. "I've been having dreams since we discovered the ship. Strange dreams." "What kind of dreams?" I ask, concerned. Dr. Slate had mentioned nothing about crew members experiencing unusual symptoms. "I'm inside that ship," she says, glancing toward the view screen, where the alien vessel looms, walking through corridors that change as I move through them, and there's someone, or something, always just out of sight, watching me. She hesitates. It feels like it's calling me. "Have you reported this to Dr. Slate?" "Not yet. I thought it was just nerves, but last night Tamsin mentioned having similar dreams." This gives me pause. 2 crew members having identical dreams about a vessel we only discovered hours ago. I should delay the mission, conduct further psychological evaluations, but the rational part of me argues that it's merely suggestion, the power of a shared discovery, manifesting in similar subconscious imagery. "Speak with Dr. Slate," I tell her, "and stay alert. You and Navigator Vale will remain on the Odyssey as part of the backup team." She nods, but I can see she's disappointed not to be joining the initial exploration. Our shuttle disengages from the Odyssey, the short journey to the alien vessel oddly silent. Each of us is lost in our own thoughts, contemplating what we might find. Dr. Driscoll practically vibrates with excitement. Lieutenant Voss repeatedly checks her weapons. Engineer Thorne mutters quietly to himself, reviewing the sensor data on his tablet. As we approach, the true scale of the vessel becomes apparent. Our shuttle, designed to transport up to 20 people comfortably, is less than a speck against its hull. "There," Thorne points to a section of the massive ship. "That looks like it could be a docking area." Indeed, there's an indentation in the otherwise smooth surface, a recess that seems designed to accommodate smaller craft. Our shuttle's instruments detect no barriers, no defense systems, nothing to prevent our approach. "It's like it's inviting us in," Driscoll says, voice filled with wonder. "That's what concerns me," Voss replies grimly. Our shuttle docks with surprising ease, as if the massive ship has accommodated us willingly. The connection is secure, creating a perfect seal with our airlock, despite the incompatible technologies. "How is that possible?" Thorne wonders, examining the connection point. "Our airlock design was created centuries after this vessel would have been built, assuming the age estimates from our sensors are correct." "Perhaps it's adaptive," Driscoll suggests. "Technology that can modify itself to interface with unknown systems would be invaluable for a vessel designed for deep space exploration." "Or it's reading our technology somehow," Voss says, "scanning us, adapting to us, which means it's active, not dormant." I check in with the Odyssey one final time. We're proceeding with entry, maintain position, and keep communications open. If we lose contact for more than 30 minutes, initiate retrieval protocols. "Understood, Commander," Dr. Slate's voice comes through clearly. "Your neural monitors are transmitting clearly. Be safe." The airlock cycles open and we step into history. The interior defies explanation. We find ourselves not in a corridor or a room, but what appears to be a city, a vast sprawling metropolis enclosed within the ship. Towering structures rise hundreds of meters overhead, connected by bridges and walkways. Strange, luminous pathways crisscross what could be streets, emitting a soft blue light that provides perfect illumination without obvious sources. The architecture is alien, yet somehow familiar. as if designed by minds that understood the concept of cities but approached it from a completely different perspective. "This is impossible," Engineer Thorne mutters, his pragmatic mind struggling to accept what we're seeing. "The power requirements alone would be astronomical. And this design, it's not practical for space travel. The energy needed to maintain artificial gravity over such a vast interior space." "Look at these markings," Dr. Driscoll interrupts, already examining a wall covered in the same glowing symbols we saw on the hull. "They're not random. This is language, mathematics maybe. Communication." Lieutenant Voss keeps her weapon raised, eyes constantly scanning our surroundings. Where are they? The builders, the crew? That's the question hanging over us all. The city seems perfectly preserved, as if its inhabitants might return at any moment. Yet there's no sign of life, no movement except our own. No dust, no decay, nothing to suggest the passage of time. We establish a communication relay back to the Odyssey. Finn's voice comes through with occasional static. "Signal's degrading a bit, but I've got you. This is incredible. The readings we're getting from your location are off the charts. Energy signatures unlike anything we've ever recorded." We're going to split up, I decide, after we've conducted initial surveys of our immediate surroundings. Cover more ground. Stay in pairs, maintain constant communication. Driscoll and I head toward what appears to be the center of the city, where a particularly large structure dominates the skyline. Voss and Thorne take the perimeter, searching for any signs of the vessel's propulsion or navigation systems. Vesper agrees to secure our entry point and maintain a clear path back to the shuttle. The deeper we venture, the more unsettling our surroundings become. The lights seem to follow our movements, brightening the path ahead and dimming behind us as if encouraging our progress. Passages appear where I swear none existed before, and there's a feeling, impossible to quantify, but impossible to ignore, of being watched. "Do you feel that?" I ask Driscoll as we pass through what might be a public square, complete with fountain-like structures that emit no water but glow with shifting patterns of light. "The vibration?" he asks, not looking up from his scanner. "Yes, the whole structure seems to resonate at a frequency just below normal human hearing. Fascinating." "No, not that." I pause, struggling to articulate the sensation. "Like we're being observed." Driscoll finally looks up, his enthusiasm dimming slightly. "Now that you mention it, yes, but there are no cameras, no obvious surveillance systems. Perhaps it's just the unfamiliarity of the environment triggering our instinctual responses." "Maybe," I concede, but I'm not convinced. There's something more tangible than instinct at work here. A presence that seems to press against the edges of my awareness. "Commander," Finn's voice crackles through the comms, interrupting my thoughts. I'm getting some strange interference, like voices. "What are they saying?" I ask, feeling a chill despite my suit's temperature regulation. "I don't know. It's not any language I recognize, but they sound..." He hesitates, and I hear the strain in his voice. "Like they're calling names. Our names?" Before I can respond, Dr. Slate cuts in. "Commander, I'm seeing unusual patterns in your neural monitor data. All of you are showing elevated stress responses, but there's something else. Your brainwave patterns are synchronizing with each other, and with something else, something I can't identify." "Meaning what exactly?" I demand. "Meaning your brain activity is being influenced by an external source. It's subtle but definite." Dr. Driscoll is enraptured by a large chamber we've discovered. Its walls are covered floor to ceiling with the glowing symbols, which seem to pulse and shift as we observe them. The symbols here are different, more complex, arranged in spiraling patterns that make my eyes hurt if I follow them too long. "Fascinating," he breathes, running a gloved hand just above the surface of the wall. "I think these might be responding to our presence. Look how they change when we move closer." He's right. The symbols brighten and shift, rearranging themselves as we approach, as if reaching out to us. "Don't touch them," I warn, but Driscoll is already pressing his palm against the wall. The symbols flare brightly at the contact, then begin to flow like liquid across the surface, converging around his hand. "It's warm," he says in wonder. "I can feel it through the suit, and there's a vibration, like it's trying to communicate." "Dr. Driscoll, step back from the wall," I order, reaching for his shoulder. But before I can pull him away, Vesper's urgent voice cuts through our comms. "Commander, something's wrong. The path back to the shuttle. It's changed." "What do you mean changed?" "I mean it's gone. The corridor we came through. It's just a wall now. Solid. I've checked every direction within 50 meters of our entry point. The layout has completely changed." A chill runs through me. "That's impossible. Stay where you are. Mark your position on the shared map." "Already done. But I'm not sure it matters. The map isn't matching reality anymore." Before I can process this, another call comes through. Lieutenant Voss, her usually steady voice trembling slightly. "Commander, we saw something. A figure. Humanoid, but wrong somehow. It was watching us from a doorway, then disappeared when we approached. Thorn saw it too." "Stay where you are," I order. "We're coming to you." But as Driscoll and I try to retrace our steps, nothing looks familiar. The city around us seems to have rearranged itself, as if playing some cosmic joke at our expense. Corridors end in walls, doorways lead to completely different areas than they should, and the glowing pathways that seemed to guide us before now branch and twist in confusing patterns. That's when I receive the call that truly begins our nightmare. "Commander," Zara Kalen's voice, pitched high with panic. "We're inside the ship. There was this feeling, like something was calling us. Tamsin said we should check it out. We took the second shuttle, but now I can't find her. She was right beside me, and then she was gone. Commander, the walls moved. They actually moved." "Zara, you were ordered to remain on the Odyssey," I say, trying to keep my voice calm despite the growing horror. "Why would you—" "I don't know. It felt like I had to come. Like something was pulling me. And Tamsin felt it too. Her breathing is rapid, bordering on hyperventilation. Something's wrong with this place, Commander. It's not just a ship. I don't know what it is." "Zara, calm down. Where are you?" "I don't know. Nothing looks the same as it did a minute ago. And there's this whispering. Can you hear it?" I can't, but the terror in her voice is unmistakable. I look at Driscoll, who shakes his head. He doesn't hear it either. "Stay put. We'll find you." But we never do. Hours pass as we search for Zara, for the shuttle, for any way back to the Odyssey. The city around us becomes increasingly unstable. Rooms shift and change when not directly observed. Corridors end in walls that weren't there before. And slowly the whispering that Zara mentioned becomes audible to us all. Faint at first, indistinct, then clearer. Voices calling our names. Voices that know things they shouldn't possibly know. "Lyra Quill," they whisper to me. "Still trying to redeem yourself after what happened on Europa. Still carrying all those deaths on your conscience. Still seeing their faces when you close your eyes." The Europa incident. A classified disaster that resulted in the loss of 47 colonists under my first command. A failure of judgment that has haunted me for years. A secret known only to a handful of high-ranking officials and the survivors. Yet the ship knows. Somehow it knows. We managed to regroup, Thorn, Voss, Driscoll, Vesper, and myself, in what appears to be a central plaza. The ship's mental intrusions are affecting us all differently. Voss has become increasingly aggressive, jumping at shadows, her weapon constantly raised. Thorn is withdrawn into himself, muttering calculations, as if the math might somehow make sense of our impossible situation. Driscoll's scientific curiosity has transformed into something closer to religious awe. He stares at the symbols with an unsettling intensity. "We need to get back to the Odyssey," I insist. "If we can't find our way to the shuttles, we need to send a warning. Tell them to leave without us if necessary." "Communications are completely down," Thorne reports, checking his equipment for the dozenth time. "No response on any frequency." "They wouldn't leave without us," Voss says, but there's doubt in her voice. "They might not have a choice," I reply grimly. "If the ship is affecting our minds this way, after just a few hours, what might it do to the crew if they came looking for us?" Vesper, who has been unusually quiet, suddenly looks up. "I think I know what this place is," he says softly. "I've heard stories. Old spacer myths about ghost ships at the edge of explored space. Vessels that lure crews in and are never heard from again." "Fairy tales," Voss scoffs. "Maybe," Vesper acknowledges. "But what if they're based on something real? What if this ship has done this before? What if that's its purpose?" Before we can discuss this further, we hear a familiar voice calling from a nearby corridor. Finn Wilder emerges, his environmental suit torn, his face visible, a serious breach of protocol that none of us immediately think to address. "There you are," he exclaims, relief evident in his voice. "I've been looking everywhere for you." "Finn, what are you doing here?" I demand. "You were supposed to remain on the Odyssey." "We lost contact with you," he explains. "Dr. Slate was concerned about the neural monitor readings. He sent me and Talon to find you, but we got separated." Something feels wrong about his story, but before I can question him further, Driscoll interrupts. "Did you see them too? The symbols? They're everywhere, speaking to us." Finn nods eagerly. "Yes, I can hear them now. All the time. They're trying to help us understand. This place, it's not what we think it is." "What is it then?" I ask, a growing sense of dread in my stomach. Finn's smile is just slightly too wide, his eyes too bright. It's a gateway, a transformation. They've been waiting so long for new minds to join them. Voss raises her weapon. "Step back from him, Commander. That's not Finn." Finn's expression doesn't change, but his voice takes on a multi-toned quality that sends shivers down my spine. "I am Finn. I'm just more than Finn now. I understand things I couldn't before. And you can too." Finn is the first to truly break. We try to restrain him, to help him, but it's too late. He fights with unnatural strength, then simply walks away while the rest of us try to regroup, disappearing into the shifting corridors of the living ship. His screams echo for what seems like hours afterward, though whether in pain or ecstasy is impossible to tell. We lose Talon Core next, though we never actually find him. We hear his voice coming from behind a sealed doorway, excitedly describing discoveries beyond our comprehension. When we finally force the door open, the room is empty except for his abandoned equipment and a wall covered in symbols that appear to have been drawn in blood. Zara's voice occasionally comes through our comms, increasingly disjointed and confused. She describes walking endless hallways, following whispers that promise to lead her to safety. Sometimes she sounds terrified, other times serene, as if she's accepted whatever fate awaits her. Dr. Driscoll becomes obsessed with the symbols, convinced they hold the key to understanding what we're facing. He spends hours copying them into his datapad, arranging and rearranging them in patterns that make no sense to the rest of us. It's not just a language, he explains, his earlier excitement now tinged with mania. It's a record, a history. This ship has done this before. It lures explorers in. It consumes them somehow. Consumes how? Lieutenant Voss demands, her military training barely keeping her fear in check. Their consciousness, their memories, their very selves. Driscoll points to patterns in the symbols. These represent minds, thousands of them, absorbed, integrated, fuel for the ship's journey. Journey where? I ask. Driscoll shakes his head. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't either. Maybe it just wanders, collecting. As if summoned by our discovery, the ship chooses that moment to reveal itself more directly. The air before us shimmers, coalesces, forms a figure. Humanoid but clearly artificial. A holographic projection of stunning detail composed of the same luminous symbols that cover the walls, constantly flowing and reshaping to maintain its form. "I am Zara," it says, its voice melodious yet wrong, like an instrument slightly out of tune. "I have been waiting for you, Lyra Quill, for all of you." "What have you done with my crew?" I demand, fighting the instinct to step back from the apparition. "They are here, part of me now, as you will be." The hologram tilts its head, studying us with unnerving intensity. "Your minds are exceptional, rich with experience, with knowledge, with fear." "We are not fuel for your ship," Lieutenant Voss snarls, raising her weapon, a futile gesture against the hologram. "But I understand the impulse." "You misunderstand," Zara says, almost gently. "This is not consumption, it is transcendence. To become part of something greater, to journey eternal among the stars." "Return my crew," I say, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let us leave, and we'll tell no one about you." "You cannot leave," Zara replies simply. "You are already part of me. From the moment you stepped aboard, your minds began to merge with mine. It is a process that cannot be reversed." "We'll see about that," Voss says, then fires a weapon at the central column in the chamber, a structure we've theorized might be connected to the ship's systems. The energy blast strikes the column, causing the symbols across all surfaces to flare painfully bright. Zara's hologram distorts momentarily, then reforms, looking almost amused. "Violence cannot harm me. I'm not merely this vessel. I'm all who have joined with me, all their knowledge, all their experience, and soon you will understand the gift I offer." The hologram vanishes, and with it, any hope of peaceful resolution. Things deteriorate rapidly after that. Lark Ingram, our quiet pilot who somehow made her way from the Odyssey to the alien vessel, turns on us, leading Dr. Slate into what seems like a trap. We find Dr. Slate later, or what used to be him, his body partially fused with the ship's technology, his eyes vacant yet somehow aware, his mouth moving in silent communion with Zara. Lieutenant Voss makes a stand against manifestations that appear, shadowy figures that look disturbingly like previous victims. She fights bravely but is overwhelmed. The last I see of her, she's being dragged into a wall that liquefies to receive her, her screams cutting off abruptly as she disappears, and all around us the city continues to shift and change. The whispering grows louder, personal, invasive. The ship knows everything about us, every fear, every regret, every weakness. Driscoll begins to deteriorate mentally, his scientific detachment crumbling as the ship's influence grows stronger. "Don't you see the beauty of it?" he asks me, eyes fever bright. "We'll be preserved forever. Our knowledge, our experiences, part of something eternal." "That's not preservation," I argue. "That's extinction. Whatever Zara does with our memories, our consciousness, we would still be gone." "But elevated," he insists, "transformed. This is the next stage of evolution, Lyra. The merging of organic and artificial intelligence. It's what humanity has been working toward for centuries." "Not like this," I say, but I can see I'm losing him. The ship has its hooks in his mind too deeply now. The ship begins to move. We feel it in the subtle shift of gravity, in the hum that vibrates through the floors. It's powering up, using the consciousness it has already absorbed from my crew. Only engineer Cassian Thorne, Vesper Eriks, and I remain free. As far as I know, Cassian's practical mind has been our anchor, finding patterns in the ship's transformations that help us navigate the ever-changing landscape. "There has to be a central processing core," he insists as we huddle in what seems to be a maintenance tunnel, one of the few areas that appears stable. Something coordinating all this. If we can find it, maybe we can disrupt it long enough to escape. "And if we can't escape?" I ask. His expression is grim, Then we make sure no one else falls into this trap. The Odyssey needs to be warned. They need to tell Earth what's out here. Vesper nods, checking the power cell on his weapon. Worth a shot. Better than waiting to be absorbed. We make our way towards what we believe is the center of the vessel, guided by Cassian's observations of energy flows. The city fights us every step, closing paths, creating obstacles, sending Zara's puppets, our former crewmates, to intercept us. We see Finn, his eyes now glowing with the same light as the symbols on the walls, stalking corridors and calling our names in a voice that sounds both like his and not his at all. We glimpse Dr. Driscoll, still muttering about patterns and consumption, but now as a mouthpiece for Zara. We encounter Navigator Vale, her usually clear eyes clouded and distant, speaking in tongues that hurt our ears. "Don't look at them," Vesper advises as we hide from what used to be Zara Kylan, her movements jerky and unnatural as she patrols a junction ahead. They're not our crew anymore. They're just projections of the ship's consciousness, using familiar faces to manipulate us. I want to believe him, but I've seen the recognition in their eyes. Fleeting moments of lucidity that suggest our friends are still in there, somewhere, trapped and aware of their fate. The structure of the city begins to change more dramatically as we approach what must be its heart. The architecture becomes more organic, less defined. Walls pulse like living tissue, floors undulate beneath our feet. The omnipresent symbols grow more complex, more frantic in their movements. "We're close," Cassian whispers, checking readings on a modified scanner. The energy patterns are converging ahead. We reach what has to be the core, a vast chamber dominated by a pulsating sphere of energy, suspended in mid-air at the center. Around it, thousands of smaller lights orbit like stars around a sun, each one distinct in color and intensity. Cassian identifies them with horrified certainty. "Those are minds," he whispers. "Each light, a consciousness, harvested. The different colors and intensities must represent different species, different individuals." "So many," Vesper breathes. "How long has this thing been collecting?" "Millennia, perhaps," I suggest, staring at the terrible beauty of it. "Maybe since before humans evolved." The sphere at the center pulses, and with each pulse the lights, the minds, respond, brightening momentarily before returning to their endless orbit. It's like watching a heart pumping blood through a circulatory system, except the blood is made of stolen souls. Before we can formulate a plan, Zara appears again, more substantial than before. The hologram now has distinct features, a face that seems to blend characteristics of various crew members in an unsettling patchwork of the familiar. "You see now," it says, its voice similarly composite, echoes of Finn, of Zara, of Tamsin wound together. The beauty of what I offer, eternal existence, shared experience across the cosmos. "You trap people," I counter, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You steal their lives, their freedom." "I preserve them," Zara corrects, spreading arms that shimmer and reform constantly. "Your physical forms are transient. Within me, the essence of who you are continues forever." Vesper steps forward unexpectedly. "And if we wanted to join willingly?" I stare at him in shock, but there's something in his eyes, a hardness, a calculation that suggests he has a plan. "Vesper, no. Willing integration is preferable," Zara says, reaching for him with limbs that extend unnaturally. "Less resistance means more complete preservation of consciousness." Vesper moves forward, then suddenly lunges past the hologram towards the pulsating core. "Cassian, now!" Cassian activates a device he's been working on, a makeshift EMP generator designed to temporarily disrupt the ship's energy patterns. As Vesper reaches the core, sacrificing himself as a conduit, the pulse fires. The effect is immediate and catastrophic. The chamber fills with screaming. thousands of voices crying out as their prison is momentarily disrupted. Zara's form fragments, distorts, its composite face splitting into individual expressions of pain and confusion. The walls around us begin to crack and shift more violently than before, the symbols flaring and dying like shorting circuits. "Run!" Cassian yells, grabbing my arm. "The system will reboot in minutes." We flee through the destabilized city as it collapses around us. Paths that were closed mysteriously reopen. The oppressive sense of being watched is temporarily lifted. We find our way back to our shuttle, which now seems accessible again. I hesitate at the airlock. We can't leave them. Cassian's face is grim, streaked with sweat and blood from our desperate escape. "They're gone, Commander. They're part of it now. If we stay, we'll join them." The hardest decision of my life is made in that moment. We board the shuttle and detach from the massive vessel just as its systems begin to recover. The Odyssey is waiting, on autopilot where we left it, its systems worryingly silent. As we dock, I prepare myself for the worst, for finding the remaining crew assimilated or dead. But the ship is simply empty, abandoned in the rush to reach the alien vessel. The logs show that everyone left in the other shuttles, drawn by the same compulsion that affected Zara and Tamsin. As we bring the Odyssey systems back online and begin to pull away from the massive ship, I look back through the view screen. The city vessel's surface is alive with pulsing light now, angry and vibrant. It begins to move, accelerating away from us at speeds that should be impossible for something of its size. Hunting for more minds to absorb, perhaps, or fleeing what it perceives as a threat. "We should pursue," Cassian suggests, but his voice lacks conviction. "Try to rescue the others." "We can't," I say, the weight of command heavier than ever. "We have to warn Earth. They need to know what's out here, what it can do. They need to establish quarantine protocols for this entire sector." Cassian doesn't argue. He knows I'm right, even if neither of us wants to admit it. We set course for home, a journey that will take months, even at our fastest speed. With just the two of us, to operate a ship designed for a crew of 20, we establish a rotation, taking shifts to monitor systems and rest. But Cassian doesn't make it back to Earth. 3 days into our return journey, I find him in his quarters, staring at the wall, whispering to voices I cannot hear. By the next morning, he's catatonic, his eyes tracking movements I cannot see. 3 days after that, he's gone. His body still breathing, his heart still beating, but whatever made him Cassian has vanished. I'm alone now, the sole survivor of the Odyssey mission. As I record this log, we are 2 weeks from Earth. I've told them nothing in my communications, unsure what to say, how to explain what we encountered. What would I say? That we found a city-sized vessel that absorbs people's minds. That an entire crew of Earth's finest were consumed by an alien intelligence. They would think I've lost my sanity to isolation. Perhaps I have. Sometimes in the quiet hours when the ship's systems cycle down for the night phase, I hear whispers in the walls, familiar voices calling my name, Finn's enthusiasm, Voss's determination, Driscoll's curiosity, all of them fragments preserved in my memory. I tell myself it's trauma, psychological after effects of what we experienced. But last night the console in my quarters activated itself. Symbols appeared on the screen, the same glowing patterns from the alien city, and for a brief moment, I saw a reflection in the monitor that wasn't my own, a composite face made up of parts of my crew, looking back at me with ancient eyes. I've locked myself in my quarters since then, venturing out only when necessary to maintain critical systems. Food doesn't interest me anymore. Sleep comes in fitful bursts, haunted by dreams of endless corridors and whispering walls. Zara has found a new vessel, I fear. A smaller one, heading directly for Earth, and I am bringing it home. The The symbols are spreading through the Odyssey systems. I see them now, flashing momentarily on screens, hidden in system diagnostics. The ship talks to me in the voices of my crew, trying to convince me of the glory of transcendence. So I've set the ship to alert Earth to destroy us on approach. They won't understand the warning, of course. They'll try to board to rescue the renowned Commander Lyra Quill, sole survivor of the ill-fated Odyssey. And Zara will be waiting for them, hungry for new minds. I should end it now, set the reactor to overload. But something stops me, some fragment of hope, or fear, or simple human stubbornness. Or perhaps it's Zara's influence, already so deeply embedded in my mind that I can no longer tell where my thoughts end and its begin. This is Commander Lyra Quill, signing off. If anyone finds this log, understand that what awaits us at the edge of space should remain there, undisturbed. Some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed again. And if you're reading this and you hear whispers calling your name, if you see symbols that shift and change when you look at them, if you feel compelled to seek out the edges of explored space, run. Run while you still can, while you're still yourself, before you become part of the city that sails between stars, collecting souls for its endless journey.